quote, an interesting idea. In this case, if you have 100 rupees of inherited wealth, whether it is property or stocks or any other asset class that you have derived from your father or your grandfather, then the children will only get to keep 45%. The large proportion, 50% plus, goes to the state. Sometimes it's called an estate tax, which is there, like I said, in some states of the US, it's there in some parts of the UK, and in some other developed economies. Now, this was an idea that India had as well back in the 60s and 70s. India had tried and tested, and this idea had failed. Inheritance tax was there on the record books from 1963 until 1985, when the Rajiv Gandhi government at that time abolished it. And Sam Pitroda was very much around in public life in 1985. So the question is, after he has proposed what seemingly on the face of it is a rather preposterous, ludicrous economic idea, an idea which the Congress party itself discarded and disbanded with way back in 1985, why then is the Congress party not completely disassociating itself from Mr. Pitroda and this ludicrous economic idea? What does it take the Congress party to say that we don't stand by this idea, and Mr. Pitroda is forthwith being suspended as the head of the Overseas Indian National Congress? That is not something that any member of the Congress party has said so far. That is not a bullet that anyone is willing to bite. Why is the question? But first, the story.
"55% is grabbed by government." Now that's an interesting law. It says you in your generation made wealth. You are leaving now. You must leave your wealth for public. Not all of it, half of it. Which to me sounds fair. In India you don't have that. If somebody is worth 10 billion and he dies, his children get 10 billion.
आप जो अपनी मेहनत से संपत्ति जुटाते हैं, वो आपके बच्चों को नहीं मिलेगी, बल्कि कांग्रेस सरकार का पंजा उसे भी आपसे छीन लेगा। यानी कांग्रेस का मंत्र है, कांग्रेस की लूट जिंदगी के साथ भी और जिंदगी के बाद भी।
वो देश के जनता की निजी संपत्ति का सर्वे कर निजी संपत्ति को सरकारी खजाने में डालकर जो उन्होंने यूपीए के शासन में तय की थी प्रायोरिटी कि देश के संसाधन पर सबसे पहला अधिकार माइनॉरिटी और उसमें भी मुस्लिम लोगों का है, उस प्रकार से इसका बंटवारा करना चाहती है।
Don't have any intention. Why you are putting his ideas in our mouth? Why you are propagating? He is just for votes. He is playing all this game.
What is happening is his comments are torn out of context and they are being sensationalized in order to divert attention from the Prime Minister's deliberate, mischievous and malicious, poison-ridden campaign.
So a storm of comments and charges surrounding this controversy about the inheritance tax, which has been proposed by Sam Pitroda. He is, of course, like I said, the head of the overseas branch of the Congress party. This is what Mr. Pitroda said. Let's analyze it threadbare. He says, inheritance tax, which is similar to what is there in the United States, is crucial for wealth redistribution. To which the Prime Minister has attacked, saying that the Congress wants to loot you in life and now even after death. He's, of course, playing off on a famous slogan of LIC, the Life Insurance Corporation of India. The Congress party's defense to this is that this is Mr. Pitroda's personal opinion. it is not the official stand of the Congress party. Now, the question is that that's not just where the BJP is launching this offensive. For the last week or so, the BJP has been going hammer and tongs, first with what Manmohan Singh had said at the meeting of the National Development Council in 2006, that we will have to devise plans to ensure minorities, particularly the Muslim minority, are empowered to share the fruits of development. Equitably in the fruits of development, they must have the first claim on resources. To which the Prime Minister back on Sunday, campaigning in Banswara in Rajasthan, first said that the Congress's Muslim quota push was at the cost of SCs, STs and OBCs. The Congress's defense is nowhere in its manifesto does it say about redistribution of wealth. Nowhere in its manifesto does it say taking away money from the rich to give it to anyone, least of all the minorities of the country. But Rahul Gandhi, in a speech on the 6th of April this year, right after the manifesto was released, did say that he will do an X-ray of the wealth held by different entities and individuals in this country. He said financial and institutional survey to find out who holds the nation's wealth. To which Prime Minister Modi's attack earlier this week was that the Congress wants to steal your wealth just for its vote bank politics. The Congress's defense, of course, is that the Prime Minister is spreading lies. An economic survey will not lead to the transfer of wealth, and they've also challenged the Prime Minister to show where in the Congress manifesto it talks about redistribution of wealth. Now let's tell you what the Congress manifesto actually says. The manifesto says this, and I quote, "There will be a nationwide socio-economic and caste census to strengthen affirmative action," which means there will be a survey to find out who are the deprived classes, who are the affluent classes, so that affirmative action can be strengthened. Prime Minister Modi attacked that on the 21st of April by saying that this is simply nothing but a plot to snatch rights from one community and appease another. The Congress's defense to that is that equal opportunities are being given to disadvantaged communities, both within the minority community and also within the majority community, which is what the father of India's constitution, Baba Sahib Ambedkar's vision was. But this latest controversy around inheritance tax, this has become a huge talking point. Whether or not this will have any vote determining effect is to be seen, because at the end of the day, after all, just 2% of India actually pays income tax. The overwhelming majority do not pay. So will this be a election defining issue? Well, certainly it's dominating the campaign trail. So let me put this to our guest panel that's joining us tonight. Tuin Sinha is national spokesperson of the BJP. Mohan Kumar Mangalam is spokesperson of the Congress party. TV Mohandas Pai is chairman of Aaron Capital and former HR head of Infosys. And Santosh Mehrotra, renowned economist, is also joining us tonight. Mohan Kumar Mangalam, let me start with you first. You know, you can say that the Congress party has nothing to do with what Sam Pitroda is saying. This is his personal opinion. We don't subscribe to this whole business of inheritance tax, so on and so forth. Why doesn't the Congress party for once say, we have nothing to do with Sam Pitroda, we are forthwith suspending him as head of the overseas wing of the Congress party, like you did with Manishankar Iyer right after 2017 when he made that niche Admi comment about the Prime Minister? Why is the Congress party so seemingly tied in its hip to Sam Pitroda? This is not the first time he has said something which is completely off-key from what the Congress party stands for.
I mean, first of all, Mr. Pitroda himself has clarified online after that he was misquoted or that it was taken out of context. He wasn't suggesting that India should actually implement any sort of inheritance or real estate tax. Secondly, there are a couple of things in your introduction, Zaka, that you said that misrepresents the concept of inheritance, and 50 rupees goes to the government or whatever percentage it is. Whichever country has implemented a real estate tax or an estate tax or an inheritance tax, they've done it on certain minimum benchmarks. So, for example, in the US, I think it's $1 million. In the UK, it's 325,000 pounds. It's not that you inherit 100 rupees or whatever the amount you inherit, you automatically give away some percentage of it. Because I know that's what the BJP is trying to build a narrative around.
No, I just use that as an example. No, I just use that as an example. It could be 100 rupees or 100 million, whatever it is. Okay,
yes,
go on.
I wanted to clarify that because BJP spokespersons have been saying that small shop owners will lose half their shop. That's nonsense.
Okay.
Secondly, we have already said that we don't prescribe to the idea, but we wonder whether the BJP supports it, because no less than Mr. Arun Jaitley, Mr. Jayant Sinha, and even their own IT and chief propagandist, Mr. Amit Malviya, who tweeted in favor of it. Jayant Sinha spoke about it extensively. And to broaden this debate a little bit, it is not only politicians, but even entrepreneurs like Nikhil Kamath of Zerodha, who come online and spoken about the benefits of inheritance tax. I will say that I don't think...
Once again, Mohan, I'll ask the BJP spokesperson. Mohan, one second. I've given you the opening comments. You have elaborately, put out your party's position, and I'm not joining issue with you on that. Can I ask you a simple and a very direct question? The very same Congress party, 40 years ago in 1985, under Rajiv Gandhi's government, abolished the inheritance tax. Can you please take a concerted and a definitive position tonight on the show that the Congress party is not for the inheritance tax? I mean, why is that such a difficult... No, once again, I'm not finished. Why is that such a difficult position for the Congress party to take? After all, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, your Prime Minister, took that position in 1985.
It isn't a difficult position. We've already taken it. I just wish you were more up to date.
So why aren't you saying it? Why aren't you saying it in as many words?
Zaka, I already said it at the beginning of my introductory remarks. I said the Congress party has clarified. Not only is it nowhere in the manifesto, but it's nowhere in our agenda to bring in any sort of inheritance tax.
Okay.
We are very clear about that. And let me just say one more thing, Zaka, when you interrupted me. I want to tell you that the proof of the fact that it is the BJP that has been talking about inheritance tax is that if you or anybody wealthy goes to a wealth manager today, the first thing they'll tell you to do is start a private trust, which is why 60% of Mr. Adani's family's wealth also is in a private trust. That's what they're doing today because they're fearing the fact that there could be an estate tax.
Okay. So I want to ask the BJP spokesperson, Tuhin Sinha, who is on the broadcast tonight. Mohan is right. Back in 2017-18, when Mr. Jaitley was finance minister, this is what he had said. This was a function that happened at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Mr. Jaitley, then finance minister, advocating for an inheritance tax, said that hospitals and universities in developed countries received large endowments because of factors like inheritance tax. He further said that endowments received by major hospitals in the US and Europe ran into billions of dollars and were provided by people and patients who benefited from them. I was analyzing why that condition does not exist in our country, and one of the reasons I found out was that those societies have very large inheritance taxes. Since we do not have that inheritance tax in India, our charities are not in terms of such endowments. This is what Arun Jaitley, BJP finance minister, said in 2018. So why are you going hemming and hawing about what Sam Pitroda has said or what the Congress party is saying or not saying? Mr. Jaitley himself said this.
Good evening, Zaka. Good evening, everybody. From what you read about Mr. Jaitley's comments, he still did not advocate it. That's point number one. Point number two, when you listen to Sam Pitroda carefully, on the one hand, he has spread falsehood about US. There is no federal inheritance tax in US, which you yourself have rightly pointed out. But look at the extent to which this Congress party can go to spread its Maoist tendency. He has used the word grab. Sam Pitroda has used the word grab. Governments don't grab, only urban Naxals and Maoists do, which, and by mentioning the word grab, he actually shows the desperate mindset of the Congress party, because the Congress party itself knows that the way it has been promising unrealistic freebies, those freebies are untenable to be executed unless they start grabbing people's wealth. That's point number, that's an important point to start with. Now, in the Indian context, you need to realize that at times, it takes 3 generations to build property which is even bequeathable to the succeeding generation. When Mr. Pitroda advocates for 55% wealth tax, the Congress, in the most direct sense, is disincentivizing hard work. It is disincentivizing wealth creation, which again reeks of a very communist, very Maoist tendency. finally, why do we disassociate it with the larger, plans which clarion calls, which Rahul Gandhi has been giving for redistribution, and a very toxic redistribution, a very sly redistribution, any which way is being unleashed in Karnataka. You would be aware that the NCBC has pulled up the Karnataka government because the Karnataka government of Congress party has put the entire Muslim community in the OBC list. This is the kind of shady redistribution seen together with Mr. Sam Pitroda's comments, which makes it a very dangerous plan.
One second. One second. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. 1 second. As far as Karnataka is concerned, Mohandas Pai is also from that state. He's here on the broadcast. There are 16 plus 16, 32 groups, 32 communities of Muslims who have been historically, socially and economically backward in Karnataka, who have been included within the backward community reservation in Karnataka, much like what happened in Andhra Pradesh. They initially moved for a 4% reservation exclusively for Muslims. That was struck down by the courts, by the High Court and the Supreme Court. Eventually, that 4% was part of the 29% reservation that they have for OBCs. But that's not the subject of tonight's debate. Mohandas Pai, the subject of tonight's debate, you can disagree with Sam Pitroda, and I've tweeted about it. People have commented about it, and it's been shared quite widely. It's a ludicrous idea. Nobody should be talking about a redistribution tax or an inheritance tax. But the nub of the problem is this, that there is genuine income inequality in this country. I'm quoting from the PLFS survey, Mr. Pai. When the UPA 1 was in power at the start of its tenure in 2004, the top 1% of people in this country, the millionaires, multimillionaires, they controlled 23.7% of the wealth of India. By the time Mr. Modi came to office 10 years later in 2014, Modi 1.0, that number went from 23.7 to 31.7. And in 2022, the last year that we have data for, Modi 2.0, that figure, the top 1% people, 2014, when Mr. Modi came to power, to 33.10%. So basically, in 10 years, between 2004 or a little more than 10 years, from 2004 to 2022, the top 1% controlled from 23.7% to 33.1%. The nub of the problem is this, that the wealth of this country is getting accumulated in a narrower and narrower sliver of the population. How do you address that?
Zaka, let us understand the problem. Yes, the wealth of the nation, large part of the wealth is in the hands of small number of people. They are entrepreneurs who have got listed companies. Even in the United States, in the last 20 years, the wealth of the top 1% has gone up, primarily because the wealth belongs to entrepreneurs who listed the company and the value of the company has gone up. The Fangman companies are worth $12-13 trillion. So if a person who is let us say, a founder of Amazon, like Jeff Bezos, his wealth has gone up. Tesla's Musk wealth has gone up because they're all listed. And the listed stock wealth went up primarily because from 2008, $25 trillion of currency was printed as a part of the quantitative easing. So it is a global problem because of liquidity. Value is going to go up. And as the economies grow, companies will grow, their valuations will grow, and people who hold the stock for founders, we see their wealth going up. You cannot blame them for being very successful. They're not done illegal things. They created jobs. They've done things the right way. Now you can also stop being an anchor. So do all the people here, and start business enterprises. Go list and become billionaires. Nobody is stopping you from doing anything. Go ahead and do it. All these academics, everybody who talk about inequality should get up academics, start their own companies, work hard like them, and get a listing and become rich. Fine, let them do it. You're pissing on somebody, sorry to do the bad word, who has been very successful, and that's not right. But
but
like
Mr.
Said,
Pai,
hang on, I'll come to it.
Okay.
Hang on.
Okay.
But Zaka, it is a problem. It is not good for society that a large part of society's wealth should be in the hands of a few. It should get accumulated and get passed on. It's not a good thing. That's what history has taught us. Now, to solve the problem, we must think of different matters. Putting an inheritance tax will not work.
Correct.
Putting the estate tax will not work. Because you essentially will create tax structure, as the gentleman said, where everybody will have a trust, everybody will do everything. The law provides you can't block all that, and that's not possible at all. And even the Congress party will not accept that, because if you look at the net worth of all the Congress leaders, they're very, very rich. We have a person in Karnataka who's worth 1,400 crores. You think he's going to pay 50% wealth tax? He's not going to do it. He's not he's going to fight it. They may depose the leader. Rahul is worth some 20, 30 crores. Is he going to give away 55% of that? He's not going to give away. They want to give away somebody's wealth. When they find that their own wealth is going to be given away, they'll fight back. That is not the point. What we got to do is, we got to create structures whereby during the lifetime, people with enormous wealth give away a large part of the wealth to endow hospitals, to endow universities, to endow research institutions, to endow schools, etc. And you must sit down and think, how do we make it happen where they get some benefit? For example, why can't we say that you can give away 2-3% of your wealth every year and set it up against your tax, as so long as you don't control the wealth and give it away, so that we incentivize them. We got to work out structures to do that, which will be good. Not giving to the government, because government is a bottomless pit. So give it for universities, because that's what we want. What Jaitley said was correct. Why don't we have big endowments? Why don't we have big hospitals? And I think the rich people of this country, the billionaires, create hospitals, should create universities, should endow everything else in a very big way. For example, one rich man in Bangalore, he's got an endowment of $40 billion. The question we got to ask him is, how much of the 40 billion he's spending every year? They don't spend. So you must force them to spend, give away the money and not control the money. That will be a good thing. But we got to think about it. Not as
Let me ask Professor Santosh Mehrotra. You know, this whole thing that's being said by the Congress party and others in the opposition, that, you know, in the 10 years of Modi government, income inequality has widened. A fewer and lesser minority is actually controlling more of India's wealth. But if you look at the Gini coefficient readings, which is arguably the most definitive economic indicator that you have of income inequality, the Gini coefficient, as per an SBI report, has fallen from 0.472 in 2014-15 when Mr. Modi came to power to 0.402 in 22-23, which is the last year that we have the data for. That's a fall of 0.07, which is almost 15% in the Gini coefficient. So how does this is hard data that I've just read out, how does this square off with what Mr. Rahul Gandhi and others in the India Alliance and the Congress party have been saying? Mr. Modi is just, you know, giving money to his rich friends, and income inequality is actually growing in India. The data does not bear that out.
Simply untrue. I'm sorry to say that the SBI research economist who has put this out keeps putting out all kinds of rubbish. I don't take him seriously as an economist at all. Though the people who one takes seriously have done some solid work, and you've already cited their work at the beginning. So you know, let's not, you know, cite inappropriate data which is not credible. No one in this country believes that income inequality is coming down. That's about the biggest joke that I could have thought about. And in fact, that wealth inequality is also coming down.
No, but Professor Mehrotra, you have to cite studies or hard data to counter that. I gave you one example. You have characterized it. You've characterized it the way you have. But do you have hard data to show the contrary?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
I hope you've done. Yes, 1 month ago there was a very solid study. That. Yes, of course, Mr. Mohandas Pai doesn't like that study. I'm sorry to say, don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you, Mohandas Pai.
Okay. Please cite the data. Please cite the data, sir. Please.
Yes, sir. So it's Piketty, Chancel, Somanchi, and Nalan Bharti. I will send you the link happily immediately after this show is over. And this program should have debated that, and I'm shocked that actually you have not discussed that. Because I've been on 4 other channels where that study has been debated.
I'm giving you other data. Let's go down to the core of this, right? Again, if you look at the top taxpayers of this country, there has been a fall in share of income of the top taxpayers over total income in percentage terms. In FY14, the top 2.5%, that's taxpayers who have an income of more than 10 crore rupees, was 2.81. In FY21, it came down to 2.28. That's a fall of about 0.5%. The top 1%, which is people who have an income of more than 100 crores, in FY14, it was 1.64%. In FY21, it came down to 0.77%. That's a fall of almost 1%.
Jacob,
So my point
Mr.
is,
Jacob,
again, I'm coming back. Please show
I
me
know,
hard
you are
data,
citing- you are citing- yes.
which contradicts this.
I'm going to send it to you.
No.
It's obvious
Please
that you
say
have
it.
not
Please
seen it.
say it on the air so that our
I
viewers
will
can know.
say it. I have just given you the citation. It's on the air. It is on the air. I have already cited it. The
Okay.
world knows about it. The world is talking about it.
Let
It's
me
quite
further.
clearly the
Let me
Modi media is
further.
not talking about
Let
it.
me
Excuse
further.
me, I
Let me
haven't
further.
finished.
Let me
Excuse
further
me, I
bring
haven't
more
finished.
data
No,
into this
don't
conversation
cite it.
for the
Excuse me,
benefit of
you-
Professor
you
Mehrotra
cite it.
as well as
SBI
for other
study
viewers who are
again,
watching this
and you are not
broadcast.
willing to
We
listen.
talked about the Gini coefficient, right? Overall Gini coefficient 2017-18 was 0.4297. 22-23 it was 0.4197. A reduction
Don't
in Gini
repeat.
coefficient means
Don't
there is
repeat. I can
reduction
hear
in
you.
income inequality.
I can
Yes,
hear you.
there is one
And listen to
category.
me.
Professor
Can you
Mehrotra, one
listen
second,
to me?
please hold your horses. One category which is self-employed, for which the Gini coefficient has gone up 0.370 to 0.376. Yes, that's self-employed people where income inequality has increased in the 5 years between 17-18 and 22-23. But regular wage workers, it's come down 0.439 to 0.431. Casual wage workers, who Rahul Gandhi keeps talking about again and again, Mohan Kumar Mangalam, from 0.276, it's come down to 0.26. So the people that you are advocating for, today also Rahul Gandhi said, I'm going to take the income and give it to 90% of the people who are deserving of it. But that the data seems to show, Mohan Kumar Mangalam, that 90% of the people, the income inequality has actually come down.
I mean, look, I don't have to be on your show because you don't give me a chance.
No.
I'm leaving.
I've
Thank
given you a chance on more than one occasion, Dr.
Zaka.
Mehrotra,
No, it's
to
not
counter the
same
data that I've just presented.
I'm countering
If
it.
you
give
do
me a chance,
have
if you
it,
keep talking,
other
I
than the
can't counter it,
Piketty,
sorry,
other
sir.
than the Piketty data, if you have any other
No, there
citations.
doesn't need to be.
No,
There
no.
doesn't
What do you
need to
mean
be.
there
That's
doesn't need to
very
be?
solid.
What do you mean there doesn't need to be? Just because you say it, it doesn't make it the
Mr.
gospel
Jacob,
truth, Dr.
Mr.
Mehrotra.
Jacob, will you
Please,
listen to me? Or
please
will you
cite,
listen
please
to me?
cite the
Listen,
source
I'm
of your
leaving
data.
because yes, I'm citing the source of my data. Mr. Ghosh, whose study you are citing, is looking only at income tax data. And you yourself in your show, your own words, I'm citing them back to you, have said that only 2% of India's population pays taxes. And this gentleman, Dr. Ghosh,
Sir,
who's the chief economist of SBI,
Sir,
has actually used
I have also quoted, not just from Mr. Ghosh and the SBI report, I have also quoted from the periodic labor force survey report, the PLFS report from 2017-18 to 2022-23, which shows that income inequality in this country has come down.
Are you serious?
I am asking you, Dr. Mehrotra, if you have data to counter this. If you do, please
Yes,
go
sir.
ahead. The airtime
Now,
is
will you
yours.
listen
If
to
you
me?
don't, I'm
you
moving
keep
on to the next
talking-
guest.
If you keep talking, I cannot answer you. So
No, no.
may I answer
Yes,
you?
please. I've been waiting for an answer for the last
Thank you,
5
sir.
minutes.
You are very kind. You keep talking and then you expect an answer. You keep repeating
So
the data.
please,
Now
give me an
listen to the
answer.
answer. Please listen to the data. Periodic labor force survey does not collect any information about incomes. It only collects information about wages. It does not collect information about incomes. So what the hell is Mr. Ghosh or whoever has done this study talking about? He's talking rubbish as he usually does. I'm sorry to say that is the tragedy of Bhakt economists who work for this government, constantly citing such
One
Bhakt
second.
economists.
The
who
PLFS
lack
survey
credibility.
from 2017-18 to 2022-23, nearly 80% of the income earners are surveyed in this who earn less than 2.5 lakh per annum, which is the minimum taxable amount. Using the data from 17-18 to 22-23, the PLFS comes to the conclusion that changes in income inequality amongst almost all income earners in India, and it disaggregates it according to the nature of employment among self-employed, regular wage and casual wage workers. The analysis reveals that there is a reduction in inequality in a broad sense. This is PLFS.
PLFS, I work with that data. I've been working on it ever since it started.
Dr.
And
Mehrotra,
PLFS
you
only
know,
takes
I have
wages.
great respect for you, and I'm asking you for
I
the
don't
fifth,
think so.
the
You don't
fifth
listen.
time on this
Excuse
broadcast.
me.
Do you
PLFS
have
does
data
not give
that
you
counters
income
what PLFS has said?
PLFS
This is the fifth
does not
time I'm
give
asking you.
Income data. Who is this economist who's telling you that this is income data? This is merely
Okay.
wages data. This is merely
You know,
wages data.
I'm
Do you
sorry,
hear me?
you know,
Do you hear me?
Dr.
You
Mehrotra is
obviously
just,
don't hear me.
you know, running around in circles. I'm waiting for hard data for him to counter me. I'd be happy if he can counter me, but I'm yet to hear that. But Dr. Kumar Mangalam, Mohan Kumar Mangalam. No, the point is, Mohan Kumar Mangalam, while your manifesto, the Congress Party's manifesto, does not explicitly say income or wealth redistribution, clause 3, page number 46 says that the Congress will ensure minorities receive their fair share. Now, the question that many are asking is, A, who defines what is this fair share? B, why just minorities receiving their fair share? There are disadvantaged communities within the majority community also who rightfully should be getting their fair share. Your manifesto makes no reference to them. Mr. Rahul Gandhi, your leader, the very next day on the 7th of April, after the release of the manifesto, said, and I quote, "We will do an X-ray that will provide an insight to minorities on just how much of a stake they are entitled to have in the nation's resource pie." May I ask you, sir, don't the majority community of this country have a stake or have an insight into how much they are entitled to in the nation's resource pie? Is that only explicitly mentioned for minorities? This is Rahul Gandhi. I've quoted him verbatim, by the way. I have not twisted anything.
Rahul Gandhi talked about SC, ST, OBCs and minorities. I mean, you don't have to literally let Mr. Modi's gang play the Pied Piper for you.
No, on the contrary, I have quoted literally what Mr. Gandhi said. Literally what he said. I have not changed a word.
I am telling you that he mentioned SC, ST and OBC just like Dr. Manmohan Singh did in his speech.
Okay.
I am telling you that you picked up one little clause in a total manifesto that talked about similar rights and benefits to SC, STs and OBCs.
Okay.
But you have basically taken that one line and pretended like we have not mentioned anything about the rest of the population. So you're clearly towing a line, Zaka. I'm asking you to be slightly more bipartisan than you used to.
Sure.
And please give a wider gamut and to understanding of what our manifesto says.
Okay.
Now I'll say that this whole that Congress is pro-Muslim, going to take money away from Hindus and give to Muslims. You know, I feel the Prime Minister really needs to get on two things, an antacid and an anti-anxiety. I really don't even believe the BJP has a manifesto because everywhere he goes and he talks about the Congress manifesto. Want to thank him for the free advertising, but if you could only actually read it and not misrepresent it everywhere he goes, it would benefit his stature.
No, in part, I agree with what Mohan has said, and Tuhin Sinha, please respond. It does not behove the stature of the Prime Minister to be saying Guspetiyan and Jinke Zyada Bacche Ho and all that. Come on, this is completely downright communal dog whistling. That is what it is.
First of all, I am very surprised at the way Congress and left economists tend to be dismissive not only of the research of Indian institutions, but also they seem to now, be dismissive of the efficacy of Gini coefficient propounded by the great Italian, economist Corrado Gini. They are skeptical even of that. Please don't interfere. You had enough.
Dr. Mehrotra,
enough instances.
Please extend him the courtesy.
You had enough instances on the show.
Yes, thank you.
You had enough instances on the show to prove your point. You could not, barring casting aspersions on Indian economists, on Indian institutions, on the Indian government, you could do nothing. When it comes to the Congress manifesto, I have repeated that there is a lot of reading between the lines that you need to do, along with what Rahul Gandhi has been uttering at select areas like Wayanad and Hyderabad. That becomes very important. When he talks about socio-economic survey, and when the manifesto emphasizes, maybe 13 times on the word minority and talks about protection of minority rights, what does it mean? that by virtue of Article 25 to 30 of the Constitution, in all likelihood, the Muslim community will not be subject to the same the same survey. So these are questions which the Congress party needs to answer. I don't know why they're shying away from answering it. Rahul Gandhi, Kharge ji seeks an appointment with the Prime Minister to explain the manifesto. The country has understood the manifesto because of the speeches, direct speeches of Prime Minister Modi. If you have a counter view, the Congress party tomorrow should hold a press conference.
Tuhin, one second. No. It's a complete stretch of the imagination to say that the Congress manifesto, forget about what Mr. Rahul Gandhi is saying, that's a separate matter altogether. What the Congress manifesto is saying, using the words redistribution, if you can show that, it's a complete stretch of the imagination because it does not say redistribution. Number two. Now, while you can say that the Prime Minister was making a political speech, he was on the campaign trail, he was trying to work up the base, but him suggesting that the Congress is going to take away monies from the wealthy Hindus and give it to the Muslims is again completely outlandish. Nowhere has any Congress leader, leave alone the Congress manifesto, said that. So let's be clear about facts tonight. Just like I questioned Dr. Mehrotra if he has any hard data to counter the data that I've put out, not just SBI report, which he says is Sarkari, PLFS report, which he has dismissed, any other data that he has to prove that Gini coefficient has actually increased in this country, I am open. I have another 2 more minutes on this debate. If he has that data, I will give him the platform to put out that data. But just like he doesn't have that, I'm asking you, Tuhin Sinha, isn't it a complete stretch of the imagination that wealth is going to be redistributed or that wealth is going to be taken from the Hindus and given to the Muslims?
No, it's not a stretch of imagination at all, and I will tell you why. The moment Congress utters the word redistribution, the entire country needs to be worried. What is the biggest example of redistribution? The Waqf Act of 1995, which gave overriding powers to the Waqf Board to acquire any property in prime areas just by believing that the property belongs to them. And even the court don't have the powers, sufficient powers to stop them. That act was only made more stringent in 2013 before the 2014 elections. And let me complete, please. I'm giving you an example why the country needs to be
accept
worried
the reality in this country, whether BJP is in power or Congress is in power. They almost all of them on either side, for varying reasons and to varying degrees, don't seem to particularly like wealth creators, particularly large wealth creators.
No, that is true because that is true, but they forget that most of their parliamentarians are large wealth creators themselves. You only have to look at the wealth declaration and you'll find out how much wealth they created. I wish you'll publish the wealth of the top 100 Congress MPs, candidates, the BJP Congress, and ask them where did the wealth come up, and ask each of them, we are willing to give 50% like Sam Pitroda said. Sam is, of course, sitting in the US. He can pontificate. He's an old man. He doesn't bother about what happens here because he is not going to be impacted. So he can make any outlandish statement. But Zaka, I want to give you one data before we close up. Look, you spoke about more, Prime Minister spoke about more children. There is a data that will worry you and worry everybody. At the time of independence, 1947, we were 33 crore people, 3 crore Muslim, 30 crore others, everybody else. Today, we are 142 crore people, 22 crore Muslims, 120 crore others. Muslims have gone up from 3 crores to 22 crores 7 times. Others have gone up from about 30 crores to 120 crores 4 times. So this population problem and the increase is a real worry because the Muslim, because of appeasement, have become the poorest community in this country. The Congress should take the responsibility for making them poorer today than they were in 1947. And they produce more children. And when you have a welfare country where you give subsidies to every individual, some people get a disproportionate share because they have more children. Just like today we have a political problem. The south of India has developed very well. Their population share has come down from 30% in 1971 to about 25%. When you have delimitation, we are going to get less seats because we control the population south. So these are all real problems.
I'll leave it at that. I'm completely out of time, but thank you very much for this fascinating conversation to all 4 gentlemen for joining us. But like I said, this is the last thing that anyone needs on the campaign trail because this is not the issue that real India is concerned about or that real India is actually grappling with. Of course, It was a full toss, if we were to use a cricketing parlance, given by a leader of the Congress party. He's the head of the overseas wing of the Congress party, and obviously the BJP is going to hit that full toss out of the park, and that's what they've done from the Prime Minister downwards. But we'll take a quick break. Leave aside the politics. Let's talk about the hard economics of this idea of income redistribution or inheritance tax, if you will. On the other side of this quick break, I will play out an excerpt of a conversation that I had with former Executive Director at the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Sujit Balla, to try and decode whether or not there is a viability for such an inheritance tax. After all, many countries in the world have an inheritance tax or a version of it, whether it is the US or UK or Singapore. So should India also think on those lines? That exclusive conversation right on the other side. Also, we'll be hitting the campaign trail in Madhya Pradesh with Jyotiraditya Scindia, who's contesting from his bastion of Guna for the first time in his life on a BJP ticket.
Presented by
seen leaders of Congress party giving out clarification as to when they have written something like that in their manifesto, what it actually means. But then we have comments from the BJP and in fact Prime Minister himself, where he has mentioned that how Congress party is eyeing towards the Mangal Sutra of women of this country, and this is the reason why in fact they people have come. I'll try to talk to this lady. Ma'am, क्या नाम है आपका, कहाँ से आई हैं और क्या कुछ प्रदर्शन में मुझे बताइए।
मेरा नाम अंजू पांचाल है, मैं जिला नवीन शादरे से आई हूँ और मैं इसलिए आई हूँ कि आपने जैसे देखा कि राहुल बाबा, क्योंकि बाबा नहीं कहूंगी, बाबा तो फैंसी वर्ड होता है, बाबा जैसे वो कह रहा है कि मेरी माँ ने अपने देश के ऊपर अपने मंगलसूत्र कुर्बान कर दिया। सबसे पहले तो मैं उनकी बात का जवाब देना चाहूंगी कि जो भारतीय नारी होती है ना, अगर आज उसके मंगलसूत्र पे आती है वो उसे कुर्बान नहीं करती, सबसे पहले खुद कुर्बान होना पसंद करेगी। और रही बात, क्या राहुल गांधी के बाप यहाँ रखा गया था कि वो जो हमारा एक्सरे करेगा? अरे जब माँ बाप अपनी बेटी की शादी करते हैं ना, वो तिनका अरमानों का अपनी खुशियाँ कुर्बान करके एक एक पाई जोड़कर गहना बनवाते हैं। और सेम वही कंडीशन एक पति की होती है, वो ये देखता है कि उसकी बीवी खुश है, तो मैं अपनी दिन रात मेहनत करके खून पसीने की कमाई से वो एक तिनका जोड़ कर एक पाई जोड़कर गहना बनवाता है। तो राहुल गांधी ने क्या कहा कि हम उसका एक्सरे कराएंगे, उसका बाप रखेगा।
All right, so this is the kind of anger in fact in these protesters, because they are saying that Congress is against what they have been following since years, and this is the reason why they are against the Congress party, and they are appealing, somewhere giving out an appeal that people should vote against Congress.
And it's also so interesting, Akash, Priyanka Gandhi's retort, her counter to the Prime Minister's Mangal Sutra remark, one would have thought was a strong one, but on the contrary, it's evoking some very strong sentiments and emotions from the women who have gathered there.
Right, in fact, it is again, about the rituals and the kind of practices that we here in India follow. And in fact, Shikha Rai, the lady who I was just talking to, she was mentioning that it is not about, who has sacrificed what, but when you are mentioning something in your manifesto, it means that, you have that sort of intention. And the problem is with the kind of intention that Congress has. In fact, the leaders present here, in fact, the president himself is saying that we have problem with what Congress thinks about and also what Congress is trying to do or what Congress intend to do. And this is the reason why they, want to appeal, that people should vote against Congress.
What's the plan? Where are these ladies going to be headed to next? What's going to be the next, move by all of these ladies who are gathered there?
Right, I'll come to that question, Avantika, but once again, I'll ask my camera person to show you some visuals first. This is Mansingh Road, and from here I'll try to show you the visuals. There you see these women protesters who have gathered here in large number. They're on truck. You are seeing the leaders, senior leaders, General Secretary Tarun Chugh, Viren Sachdeva, who is holding the mic and in fact, giving out his speech, and also these women protesters are from different districts of the national capital of Delhi, and they are somewhere against the kind of manifesto that Congress has released. They are against the kind of comments that leaders of the Congress party are involved in. In fact, the comment that Prime Minister made, they are protesting on those same lines where they are saying that Congress party is against the women. Congress party is trying, in fact, to somewhere deviate the issue where they are talking about the kind of surveys or everything related to what we have seen in the past few days. These are the visuals, and in some time from now we have been told that these people will be marching towards the Congress headquarters. Congress headquarters, I'll try to give you a sense. Congress headquarters is, just 300 meters away. We have this roundabout, just 100 meters, and then on the left side we have Akbar Road, where we have the Congress headquarters. And in some time from now, these protesters will move towards Congress headquarters. We have, Delhi police security arrangements as well. Protesters in large number, but then security personnel as well. And, everyone is waiting that in some time from now, the president will conclude his speech, and then they will move towards the Congress headquarters.
Akash, I can see some ladies out there. Can you just quickly ask them, while the Congress manifesto has sparked this massive war of words, can you ask these ladies what, in the manifesto has especially pained them? What has irked them? The fact that they believe that what the Prime Minister is saying is true, कि उनके सारे एसेट्स ले जाएंगे, उनका धन, उनकी ज्वेलरी, उनका गहने, उनका सब कुछ जो भी उन्होंने कमाया है, is that what is something that they are taking objection to?
Right. I'll try to talk to some ladies as well. यहाँ पर है कुछ महिलाएं. मैम, मुझे आपसे जानना है, आप लोग विरोध प्रदर्शन करने आए हैं. क्या कुछ वो पॉइंट्स हैं जिन पर आप विरोध प्रदर्शन कर रहे हैं कांग्रेस के मैनिफेस्टो की, जहां तक बात है? और एक और सवाल में साथ में, प्रधानमंत्री ने जो कुछ बोला, मंगलसूत्र को लेकर जो कुछ बोला, क्या आपको वाकई लगता है कि ऐसा कुछ होने वाला है कि अगर बाई चांस कांग्रेस जीत जाती है तो कांग्रेस का वो प्लान है?
आपका पहला क्वेश्चन, प्रधानमंत्री जी ने बोला, क्या वो सच है? तो मेरा
Let me now go across to a renowned economist and former executive director with the International Monetary Fund. Dr. Surjit Bhalla is now joining us. Thank you very much, Dr. Bhalla, for speaking with us. So this whole idea of inheritance tax, which has been floated by Mr. Pitroda, first of all, he says it's there in the United States. He calls it an interesting idea. It's there in just all of 6 states out of 50 in the United States. Why do you believe that this is a bad idea? India has had inheritance tax in the past. Why did we abolish it?
We have had lots of bad ideas in the past, and we have abolished several of those bad ideas. Some of them are still continuing. So just because we had an inheritance tax in the past doesn't mean it should be applicable to it. More to the point, look, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but we are in the stage of development where we should be celebrating the generation of wealth, the generation of jobs, the economy moving forward. Remember, the big idea has to be, when you tax, is redistribution, correct? You want to be able to redistribute, and that is one of the most celebrated policies around the world if you can achieve it. Now, you redistribute income. There are very few countries in the world that attempt to redistribute wealth, and for obvious reasons. As you said, we even tried it. So I think the concentration should be what has happened to income inequality, consumption inequality, and what is the government doing to redistribute towards the bottom half of the population or the bottom third, whichever.
Okay.
And I think in that regard, India has had a huge success story, especially over the last decade. For the first time that I have seen or studied for any country in the world, that inequality, consumption inequality, has gone down in India, according to the 22-23 Consumer Expenditure Survey. Now, inequalities don't go down. The reason they have gone down and why the data seem to be very accurate,
Okay.
look at the set of redistribution that has been done over the last decade. Starting off with food being given free to, mind you, 800 million people. Now, where did we get the 800 million from? It is according to the Food Security Act, which was a big supporter of the Food Security Act, but those are the facts. So the Food Security Act stipulated, passed by the Congress government, stipulated that 75% of rural India,
Okay.
regardless of their income or consumption level, would get free food, cereals, rice or wheat. And actually at that time, it was rupees 2 or rupees 1 per kilo. And 50% of urban India. Whoever lived in urban India now would get the free food. What has happened, and I think we've talked about it over the last decade or so, that basically prior to 2014, there was massive leakage in the distribution of food. And the call that it was the Congress party's own Rajiv Gandhi who had said in 1984, that 85 rather, the statement was made in 1985, that only 15 paise of every rupee went to the poor.
Correct.
Now it turns out that it's close to 85, 90 paise of every rupee meant for the poor has actually gone to the poor. And mind you, the poor...
Dr. Balla, let me stick to this issue of income inequality. Today, Rahul Gandhi had a press conference, he had a speech here in Delhi, and he continues to insist that a large majority of India's wealth is controlled by a tiny minority of people. And if you look at, for example, the surveys, the PLFS survey that has come out, it says when UPA 1 was in power, which was in 2004, the top 1% people control 23.7% of India's wealth. In Modi 1.0, when Modi came to power in 2014, that jumped to 31.7%. And in Modi 2.0, the last figures we have for is 2022, the top 1% people control 33% of India's wealth. So Rahul Gandhi's grand idea is to take away all this wealth, this excess wealth, and redistribute it to 90% of Indians who he says need this wealth.
No, so he can say, or somebody else can say they need this money. That was my whole point of going through the data of the PDS and then housing. That basically there has been a massive free housing program for the poor, or again, I don't want to say the poor, for the bottom 50% of the population. That's wealth. And as far as wealth is concerned, and I think we did this program with you also back in 2018, is in my book, The New Wealth of Nations, that I documented that for developing countries like ours, the most important form of wealth was education. It's not financial wealth. So if you take education and the improvements in education that have taken place, that's a retransfer. Housing, education, food, that's an enormous amount of income. After all, income is nothing more than flow from your wealthy assets. Whether these assets are controlled by the government or not, they are giving it to you. So you want to look at income, not wealth.
But can you explain to our viewers, and many are asking this on Twitter and stuff, you know, the UK has an estate tax. Like I said, about half a dozen states in the US have an estate tax. Many of these industrialists, when those industries were booming, were getting, land at subsidized or IT parks at subsidized prices and so on. Why should India not have an inheritance tax? Explain this in layman terms. Why do you believe this is a bad idea?
Once we get to be a developed country, we can start discussing inheritance tax. We are nowhere close to being. It is 2047, after all, is when we are going to be a developed country, aspiring to be, and I think we'll achieve that. Once we get there, then let's talk about an inheritance tax. I mean, how many developing countries do you know that have an inheritance tax? The developing countries, the poor countries, the middle income countries, their entire concentration, correctly, is on uplifting of the poor, which many of them have done, including India, and then the development of the middle class. The middle class is the one that is doing the most amount of savings and is doing the most amount of generation of wealth.
So I come back to this issue because Rahul Gandhi seems to be banging on about this income inequality. And I want to go back to the Gini coefficient numbers. Now, there was an SBI report that was put out some years ago, which said that the Gini coefficient here in India had actually become better. So Gini coefficient is an indicator of equality and inequality. If it's 0, it's perfectly equal. If it's 1, it's perfectly unequal. So in 2014-15, when Mr. Modi came to office, it was 0.47. And in 22-23, which is what the last year that we have numbers for, it is 0.402. So it's come down by about 0.7% or so. Now, the point is, if you were to go, this is among the overall data, but if you were to break this down amongst wage workers, regular wage workers, and casual wage workers, there the Gini coefficient has gone up. This is the contention by the opposition parties.
No, look, let's look at the wage data. One big fact about the wage data that we get from the PLFS is that the category that has shown the largest increase in their consumption or in their income, even wages, which is income, has been the casual workers. The slowest increase in that, the PLFS data, is the salaried workers, who are the richest. There are 3 classes of workers: self-employed, casual, and the
salaried.
And the salaried workers, who are the richest, have shown the lowest increase in wages, rate of growth of real wages. So, look, my book is about how we distort data. Here's a classic example of distorting the data. When the data shows that the richest people in India have had the slowest rate of growth of income, and the poorest people in India have had the highest growth of income or wages,
so
then you come out with this.
Your solution to income inequality is A, upliftment of the poor, plugging the leakages of the welfare state, and as far as the middle class is concerned, to help them continue generate wealth and jobs and so on. You wouldn't want to even think about redistributing income as has been suggested by the Congress party.
Look, I am a strong believer that societies, especially India, have to do redistribution with growth. You can't redistribute something unless you grow. So that's the responsibility of the state, to redistribute. Second, if I've also argued on exactly this, that Indian tax rates are too high. Whether we look at the GST or even income tax rates. So that's another form of, you want to redistribute, you first want to increase the pie. And you increase the pie because then there's greater compliance by the rich and by the middle class if you decrease tax rates, not if you increase. And second, the GST is also at a very high level, in my view. The average GST tax rate should be reduced to something like 12% or 13%.
Okay. All right. Dr. Surjit Bala, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us your thoughts on this raging controversy about this inheritance tax and, of course, this redistribution of wealth, which has, of course, become a big talking point on the campaign trail as well.
तालियां बजा करके स्वागत करें सभी लोग।
एक प्रधानमंत्री जिन्होंने 80 करोड़ लोगों को मुफ्त में अनाज पेट भरने के लिए दिया है, सालों साल मेरे भाइयों।
On the campaign trail, we have caught up with Maharaj, as he's called popularly in these parts. Mr. Scindia, your sense of how the voters in Guna are thinking about the elections this year?
I can't tell you that. I need to ask you that. You can't ask a candidate what he thinks. I think it would be very biased for me to tell you what I think. I must ask you for your feedback.
Okay, let me
Because
rephrase.
I don't believe in a candidate. Obviously, is going to say, every candidate says that. So I would rather reserve that for your judgment than mine.
Okay, let me rephrase that question. In decades, you've asked people to vote for you and press the Panja button or the ballot be stamped on the Panja, chap. This time you're telling them कि फूल का button दबाइए. Is it difficult? Are you worried that perhaps they would associate for you only?
Not at all. People have understood very clearly what has happened in the last 4 years, and I mentioned that in the on the stage as well, in the munch while I was speaking. That a government that came in with a mandate to serve the people became a government that was only about vote, note and kursi. And that's why when they told me ki sadak pe aa jao, on the one hand Pradhan Mantri ji's leadership capability, I decided at that point of time that I need to serve the nation under his leadership, and therefore brought down the government and made sure that a BJP government was formed which has served the people. And people...
Co-presented by JK Puncture Guard Tire. अब हवा नहीं निकलेगी.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Pakistan is surviving on bailouts. At 25% inflation, their cost of living is the highest in Asia. The security situation is precarious, with their one-time proteges, the Taliban, turning against them. And the army has barely managed to steal the election for its chosen party. The short point of this long story is that they have way too many problems. But guess what Pakistani leaders want? Kashmir. It's like their program